Australia, what's your favourite sport?
Football.
Snack?
Pies.
Animal?
Kangaroos.
And what's your favourite car, Australia?
Holden.
Let me see, that's football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars, huh?
Right.
Well, you sure sound like Australia to me.
We are.
Well, then you better tell me again, because I just might forget.
We love football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars. Football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
That's football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
Football and meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
I think you better tell me again.
We love football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
In case you're wondering, this commercial is brought to you by football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Australia's own car.
They go together underneath the southern stars. Football and meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
Makes sense to me!
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Tools in the Shed. There are 4 tools in the shed today because it's quite a momentous day. We're recording this on Monday, the 17th of February, and General Motors has announced the cessation of the Holden brand in this market and in New Zealand. We, 4 of us, are just fresh from listening in on a press conference that was happening down in Melbourne. We had some of our team actually present at that press conference, so we've got a bit of information. And we thought it appropriate on such a momentous day to mark it with a discussion and try and fill you in on some of the details as we know them and help people out there that may have questions and point you in the right direction. So really, we heard from 2 people. We heard from the GM International Operations Senior Vice President, Julian Blissett, and we heard from the interim chairman and managing director, Christian Aquilina, and they were there to field questions. And the press conference went all over the place, really. It went from what does this mean in terms of jobs, the dealer network, motorsport with supercars, and all kinds of things that I hadn't thought about. For example, the Colorado Ute is produced in Thailand. What does that mean for that plant? So we've
Corvette.
had some, and the Corvette, which is imminent. So we've had answers to some of those, but there are still some open-ended questions that we've been talking about. So, Matt, you mentioned earlier that there's a pretty handy Q&A link.
Yes.
Whereabouts is that happening?
Yeah, so if you look on the Holden Facebook page, the FAQ they've put up there for people who want to know what Holden is telling its customers or its stakeholders, I guess you could say, what they can expect. The questions range from things like, where can I get my Holden serviced? When will Holden close?
Absolutely.
What's going to happen to the Lang Lang Proving Ground? These are all pertinent questions that they've tried to answer as much as they can up until the actual closure, whenever that
And just
may
to
be.
give everybody listening and watching the kind of statement as it stands, the first paragraph of the press release that Holden has issued, and we've each got a copy here, says the Holden brand will be retired from sales in Australia and New Zealand, and local design and engineering operations will wind down by 2021. So we're reading that, obviously, as by the end of this year. General Motors announced today, Maven and Holden Financial Services operations will also wind down in Australia. So if you're a Holden dealer, all of a sudden your world is starting to, the walls are coming in around you.
Yeah,
That's right.
exactly.
I think
More than they were before.
Yeah.
that's true. Look, if you're a Holden owner and, you may have just bought, a Holden, they've reassured us as well that for the next 10 years you'll be provided by support from their services departments, which will be relocated. But yeah,
Which as we were talking about before, Matt and Richard, is that's okay. You've maybe bought a car recently, and you know that there'll be service and parts support for the next decade. When you go to sell that car, you're probably okay. Then when it's in the used car market, it becomes a real difficult proposition. Unless, of course, there are others that spring up to service what is still a very substantial Holden car park, out there, where there's a will and where there's a dollar. There's a way, I suppose.
absolutely. And anyone like Mal, myself, and JC and UM4 have old cars. There's really no problem in finding parts for old cars. There's already a lot of Holdens out there, and there's always entrepreneurs and businesses out there that can make bits. So yeah,
We should also note that Holden has been through this process in recent times when they closed the Opel brand in Australia.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they had to wind
Yes.
up dealerships, assure owners of
And in
parts
fact, Holden dealers
service.
were servicing Saabs for a while there as well, weren't they?
Yeah, when Saab rolled itself out of the market.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think this there's obviously an element to this. We've seen this brand transform from what was a really strong... It was the number one. It was where everybody else aimed to be.
That's right.
Over the last 20, 25 years, it's just turned into a brand that it never really was in the past.
Because it was a tariff-protected brand. You know, that Ford and Holden, and to a certain extent Chrysler, carved up the market because they were protected as local manufacturers, and others benefited from that over time. Nissan, Mitsubishi, and, on it goes.
Well, in 2009, Holden sold 50,000 Commodores. In 2019, they sold 5,000.
Yes.
The writing's on the wall there.
Yeah,
plainly.
absolutely.
And I believe it was 11,000 ZB Commodores.
Yes.
Between
So exactly. And for mine, I think there's been a series of events from 2017 in terms of the plant closing down, and they'd stopped making Holdens in Australia, which meant the brand was all of a sudden hollow. That Holden stood apart because it was an Indigenous Australian brand that built cars here, and that they hung their hat on that very strongly over time. So once that's gone, the soul of the brand departed.
Yeah.
So then you had, all right, well, we're going to keep Commodore, and Holden will still be Holden because we still have Commodore. And then David Butner, ex of Toyota, became the chairman, and it seemed like, right, they're going to give this a real red-hot go. And then he actually decided to depart, which that's never a good thing.
Yeah.
Wasn't there even a famous quote of him saying, the Commodore won't be axed under my watch, or something
I'm
like
not here
that?
to close Holden.
That's right. Yeah. And he sure wasn't, because the day after he gave his public notice, the Commodore was axed.
That's it.
I was there the day he said, I'm not here to close Holden.
That's right,
And he stood by his word. He left before the company closed.
Because it's not too big a leap to say that's exactly what he knew was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be the bunny that's in those particular headlights.
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
He would have been called to Detroit, and he would have been said, this is the message you've got to give, and he would have said, I made a promise that I wouldn't do that.
And this is coming, this announcement today is coming just a few months after the brand repositioned itself or put out that it wanted to reposition itself as a ute and SUV focused brand because of the Astra and Commodore, also known as the Insignia, being basically not really available to them anymore because it's now under a different
PSA.
ownership.
Yep.
So
Mal came up with this during the press conference, and we realised it. Commodore wasn't axed at the same time as the brand was axed.
Yeah.
So as Mal pointed out, this was an indication that maybe they were going to try and give it a go.
Because it would, if you think about the PR and all the activities, it would be so easy to just go Commodore end, Holden end in one go, one message.
Yes.
But they've happened, 2 months apart.
Well, I think all of
suggests
us
they're
listening
trying
in
really
on the
hard to
press
keep-
conference believe that the people speaking on Holden's behalf were being very genuine and, in fact, quite personal and heartfelt. And when they said, it seemed like a platitude when they said, every avenue was exhausted, we tried every different strategy. I actually got the impression that that was genuinely what they had done.
Yeah.
That it felt like they'd tried to move these pieces around and make it work in some way, and just ultimately hadn't been able to. It was a red hot go. They did give it a red hot go, but it didn't work out.
I guess what we've got to be completely clear, though, that the reason why Holden is closing down is not really because it's a Holden thing. It was a General Motors decision that they weren't going to be making their cars in a right-hand drive format anymore.
Good point.
And we've got to acknowledge that right-hand drive vehicles represent a tiny proportion of the world's vehicles.
And as we were saying before, we've watched what's happened with General Motors in other markets, developing markets, for instance, in South Africa and India. And obviously they've pulled out of those markets. They pulled out of Europe.
Yes.
And that was the moment when I went, oh, geez, it's not long.
No.
And now it's finally happened in Australia and Thailand, where they're building the Colorado and Trailblazer.
Yeah.
And it's just a rationalisation of resources and a look forward from General Motors at where the car market is actually going. And, as we've said in the past, electric cars or the future of the car might not require a steering wheel be left or right. It could be middle. It could be non-existent. So,
Yep, that's
right
true.
now,
This
Right
is
now?
it. But we've just fallen probably 10 or 15 years short of right-hand drive and left-hand drive
Being
not
an issue.
being important anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so. But
Yeah.
I mean, the reason we're all in this room and the reason why people are listening or watching is because it's been a bit like, an elderly relative that has been unwell for some time. You've known exactly what's coming,
Yeah.
but it doesn't make it any less shocking when
Yeah.
it finally does. So today is a big
That's
day.
it. I think I've written down here, I'm not surprised, but I'm shocked.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
that's
like-
right. Well, that sums up
Yeah.
your life.
Yeah,
Really.
it does. Every single day, I'm not surprised, but I'm shocked.
Yeah.
So am I, Richard.
Yeah.
But I think all of us, you're right, Richard. I think all of us do feel a little bit hollow
Yeah.
after this. It was the same thing when we found out about local manufacturing. I think everybody in the country who had any connection to Holden or Ford or Toyota at that time would have felt the same way. The same thing with
Absolutely.
Mitsubishi all those years ago.
Yep.
So, it has a widespread impact on a bunch of different people and different stakeholders, and also, flow-on effect in economies as well. So there's a big impact here.
Absolutely.
And it goes so far beyond the old football meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars
Yeah.
analogy.
It does.
Holden's part of our national fabric. For a long time, Holdens were sold as Holdens. The idea of a Holden
correct.
model really only started to happen with the Tirana and the Commodore.
Yeah.
You look back at the sales data, it wasn't that long ago where they were just recorded as Holdens.
But
That's
you
right.
know that football meat pies came from a Chevrolet ad.
Yeah.
Which was
is also
baseball,
used
hot
in
dogs.
South Africa.
Baseball, hot
They had a
dogs,
South African
something or other in
version as
Chevrolet.
well.
Oh, was it?
Apple pie, I think,
Yeah.
the American one. But
Yeah.
it was everywhere. But
Yeah.
So that was just a marketing slogan. But
It sort of speaks to Holden's role
The
within GM that it
circumstances-
just became, an echo of
Yeah.
something that had been done
that
elsewhere.
long ago
Yeah, yeah.
as well.
I thought it was nice. Ford Australia put out a tweet in response to the news.
Saying sucked in?
No,
No, not
no,
that.
not this time. Not this time.
You get more characters than
You
that
do.
Yeah.
on Twitter.
They were
You do
more,
now, don't you?
Yeah, more considerate than that this time around. All of us here at Ford Australia are saddened to hear the news that Holden will cease operations. Holden is an iconic brand that holds a special place in the heart of many Australians and has done so much to shape the Australian automotive industry and country. Its vehicles have been worthy competitors both on road and on the racetrack. To our friends at Holden, thank you for keeping us on our toes and inspiring us to keep aiming higher. We will miss you.
Wow, that's a great
Which
message.
is a really
isn't it?
beautiful
That's a great
sentiment, I
message.
think.
Absolutely.
And look, we shouldn't forget.
From
I'm thinking
an
of
organisation.
Wax 333. This is New Zealand as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
So,
It is.
Holden and Ford have been just as important over there, I'd argue,
Yep.
as they have been here.
Yep.
Well, yeah, 31 dealerships in New Zealand, 180 something in Australia.
185.
185. So
Mel
it's
knows these stats. They're just at his mental fingertips
Because I
the whole time.
just listened to the press
All right.
conference.
Mel knows how
That
many
too.
staff each of the dealerships has.
How many
Mel.
do they have, Mel?
Well, there's Bill and Parts.
Mark in the
Tracy
service centre.
in
Yep.
sales.
Yep.
There's Robert in finance as
Yeah,
well.
sure.
He does
Yeah.
insurance at the
And
same
then
time.
Steve washes the cars each morning.
Oh, I love
Steve.
Steve.
Thank you,
Steve.
The good news is that, car dealerships still exist and there is still expansion in the market in different brands. So
Yeah.
hopefully these skilled employees can find work in other brands.
Yes.
Well, that's it. Interesting. In the press conference, they said every single person has been thought of. I know that they are just words, and they do say these things that huge big redundancy announcements.
Yeah.
But 800 staff, 600 are going to have to find work elsewhere, but 200 are going to stay on, and they'll be manning service centres. So, as I said before, if you have bought a Holden, you are concerned about the support.
Yeah.
There will be plenty of parts,
Yep.
and that you will be looked after, according to
Yes.
Holden. So that's reassuring. Look, I mean, at the same time, you can't blame Holden for this. We
keep coming back to it.
fantastic. There's a line here in the press release saying the decision is based on global priorities and does not reflect the hard work, talent, and professionalism of the Holden team.
Sure.
Rob Triviani,
Yeah.
the suspension guru there, all the teams that work
team
the
of
design.
engineers love
Fabulous
this
team.
product.
Yeah.
We are going to lose.
course.
We are going to lose all that, and it's sad because it's a wealth of knowledge.
But I hope we'll see their magic elsewhere. And
Yep.
we've seen the opportunities that might be around with the likes of Premcar recently, which used to be FPV by
Yep.
another name, in that they're
Yeah, that was
rejigging
its other
utes.
name.
Thanks,
It was
James.
FPV.
Keep me on my...
Sorry.
Anyway, there are opportunities for engineers in Australia beyond
Yep.
direct OEMs
Yep.
that manufacture cars here. And the likes of the Navara M-Trek Warrior,
Yep.
the guys that
Yeah, I get you.
that are setting up the Mustang R spec.
Yep.
At, can't think of them. Herod.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Those guys do amazing things, small volume, but create products that Australians love.
And I think we were saying a little while ago that if you take the emotion out of it, and there is a lot of emotion because most Australians have either been in a family that's owned a Holden, everyone knows someone, everyone knows Holden. It's such a part
I've got one right now.
You have a Holden right
My
now.
first car was one.
There you go.
Mine too.
There you go.
Mine too.
I think we did
Still
an
got it.
episode where we talked about our Holden reminiscences about the Commodore more particularly. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
When it disappeared. But if you take that emotion out of it, Holden's sales had diminished to the point where it's not going to make a tremendous impact. It will make an impact. I think M4, as you said, they're still a top 10 brand in
Yep.
terms of sales month to month, but they're 10,
Yeah.
not 1.
Yeah.
That it's not as big an impact as it may have been some time
And
ago.
and we, because we love the brand and what it means to Australia and what it's meant to Australia for so long, I think maybe we've put more emphasis on its success or failure over the last 5 years, for instance, than probably was due to its to its credit, because it is just a pinch of salt in the ocean in the world of General Motors.
Sure.
We've got to be realistic about this,
Yeah.
and this is a business decision. There's obviously no malice intended,
No.
but it's just one of those things that they have to make a
Simple
decision.
business.
That's right. It's like you were saying, in the Australian context, Holden counts for quite a bit still. But in the General Motors context, like I was saying, it's this tiny little buzzing mosquito down at the other side of the world that's losing money. Can't we just swap that and make that go away? Would be, that's very cold. I'm sure that there was more, thought for the people involved. But just from a balance sheet point of view, it has been a bad news story for some time.
Can I ask, could this possibly be a cause of bad management from General Motors and not looking ahead? I mean, you've got a Ford situation where Ford have just gone from strength to strength after Falcon. There'd be a lot of people out there wondering, what's the difference? Holden stopped building their Commodore, Falcon stopped building their Falcon. Why did Falcon go on to strength to strength?
Ford's been lucky to have the Ranger, which is produced elsewhere, which is a car that is suiting, was it the top 2 best-selling cars last year?
Yeah.
The Ranger,
Number
for-
two, I think it
and
was.
largely
Second bestseller.
private buyers
Yeah.
who are
Yep.
choosing to buy that car,
Yep.
and the Mustang, which is a result of Ford's One Ford program, which no longer exists,
Yep.
but they've made us a Mustang in right-hand drive
Yep.
from the factory
Yep.
with right-hand drive indicators, all the stuff
Yep.
that we get for a very good price.
Yeah.
But early on was just phenomenal. I never
Yes.
would have imagined that many
Yeah.
Mustangs would have been
No,
sold, but it was a real saviour.
So
And every
really-
other American car that's come here back in the day has been terrible. Think
Sure.
Taurus, think Probe. But the Mustang is a good thing.
I went to the launch of the Taurus.
I love to
Oh,
think
boy.
probe.
Was that an
I
astrology
was
conference?
So
or was
excited
that
to hear him say Probe.
Alpha Centaurus,
But so really, what we're saying is the difference between success and failure for Holden has just been a good 4x4 Ute and a sports car.
Well,
Maybe.
and that's not to say that the Colorado is a bad 4x4 Ute. It's just
Oh, well,
that
yeah.
it's never been at the same level. It's always
Yeah.
fallen behind in terms of technology and safety equipment, that sort of stuff.
And the light commercial ute segment is really competitive.
It's so hard to be in there if you're
Yeah.
not standing for something, if you're not standing for either the rights to brag at the worksite or the
High
rights
luck.
to say I'm smarter than you, I bought the Triton,
Yes.
because it's cheaper.
Yep.
Then what's your point of difference? And I think
Yeah.
that's where they've struggled. But also we've got to remember that without a Ranger and a Mustang,
Yep.
Ford would be
Yeah.
out the door as well.
They're not selling Focuses. They're not
yeah.
selling Mondeos.
But
they're
then,
not
I mean,
selling-
you can say what if and maybe and blah, blah, but Ford has got those products.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holden doesn't. And there may have been an alternate scenario where Holden hit on some hot product in an altogether different segment
Yep.
and managed to make the numbers add up. But it just didn't come to pass.
Yeah.
And in total fairness, there have been plenty of products that have kind of contributed to this situation. Thinking Captiva, thinking Barinas, I'm thinking Epica. I'm
Cruise.
thinking,
Yeah, you're right.
Cruise, ultimately. Yeah.
Yes.
Malibu.
Malibu.
I remember in a past life we had that Epica fail headline,
Yeah.
which nobody really loved the Epica, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of things that have contributed to this.
Yeah.
And it's-
And we had Corvette coming and may still have Corvette coming. I'm not.
Yeah,
not sure we're
Chesto's
clear
on a
that.
plane to go and
Yeah.
drive one very shortly.
Yeah.
Which
But-
may be
well,
a-
we
We'll
hope
be
he is.
reporting on
We
that
hope he
today,
is.
so check the site.
Yeah.
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 Look, I guess that was the other question out of that press conference, and that is what does that mean for GM's presence in Australia? Will Corvette still come? some.
And they've committed to having a new brand, GM Specialty Vehicles.
That's right. Yeah.
Which sounds a lot like GM Special Vehicles
Yes.
or Holden Special
Yep.
Vehicles. But it's unclear what form that will take at this stage.
Because then to have that business at the same time as pretty much closing down your retail network, all as Holden franchises will go. To have a smaller volume specialty business, you need to more or less reassemble that, but in a smaller way around things like, the Silverado, maybe it continues to be Camaro and Corvette and whatever else.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've got to ask, though, why would they bother? How are they going to make any money out of just selling, a sports scat sort of like,
Well, HSV, for example, if they can sell a Camaro at $100,000, or if they can sell a big Chevy Ute at 150, there's a bit of margin there, and it's not
expensive
like they
to
said,
convert, though.
Like they said in the press conference,
And
it's going to be a
calibrate
very
ADR compliant.
small element that they'll be playing
Yeah.
in this ecosystem.
And everyone needs to recognise that the Camaro and the Silverado programs are only made possible by Holden's partnership with Walkinshaw.
Yes.
Which is also, HSV
Yes.
by another
Is
name.
it called APV? Australian
It's the
Performance
Ram
Vehicles?
thing.
Oh, is it? I beg your pardon.
ASV.
Yeah,
It's the other job.
ASV, sorry.
And they convert Ram
Yeah.
products within that Walkinshaw building.
So that way, those Silverados and other GM products coming in, it's no skin off GM's nose. They're
No.
just selling some cars, putting them on a boat, and over they go. Do what you like with them. It's just a small number of incremental sales.
But Walkinshaw, Camaro, Silverado, etc., will clearly need to find a new way to sell these products because the dealerships are converting. The remaining dealerships are converting to parts and service.
That's right.
That's right.
So there'll be no showroom.
And so in the FAQ on the Holden Facebook site, it says, is Corvette still coming to Australia and New Zealand? The answer is, we will work through this and share information in the coming months.
Wow.
So,
Hope so.
it's not a
Yeah.
no and it's not a yes.
Yeah.
But I would, I'd be a bit hesitant to be laying down a deposit.
You might have to buy it online.
Yeah. Information they weren't willing to share with us was how much money it was going to cost to bail Holden out. Now, they factored that it was going to cost $1 billion to complete the transition process, including the Thailand plant. It's a lot of money. It's obviously more than that. But it'd be interesting to know exactly how much it would have required to keep Holden going.
Yeah.
But they weren't willing to
Well,
comment on that.
Obviously, the cost of shutting the business down in Australia is lower than the cost of making right-hand drive vehicles
Yeah.
for one market.
You're just making them for Australia, New Zealand, and Thailand.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And we've already seen GM pull out of Europe and the UK.
Yep.
So
if they're theoretically they sell 45,000 cars here,
Yep.
maybe 2,000 or 3,000 in New Zealand, and maybe they might sell 200,000 in Thailand.
yeah.
That's still pretty small bickies.
It's unusual. I mean, I've seen reports saying that General Motors in Detroit only decided 48 hours ago that the business right-hand drive wasn't a viable business anymore. 48 hours ago.
Yeah.
V8 Supercars was told this morning.
Yeah.
It's all happened seems quickly, even though
Yeah.
it's been happening forever.
Yeah. And if you were in this sort of world and you didn't see the writing on the wall, then it's probably worrying.
Speaking
Yeah.
of which, I mean, I think a bit of chest beating is important
Oh,
here
look.
because,
Yep.
Richard, you've looked back for our episode where
Yes.
Wow.
this bold prediction was made.
Go back to 2018. I think it might be like episode 28. I'll dig that up for
Might
us.
be.
Matt Campbell pointed out he can't see Holden existing in 5 years' time. I then jumped in with, I don't think it's going to be here by the end of the year or something like that. And then JC, qualified it all with, it's just hard to believe that it could exist with sales the way they're going.
Yes.
So I don't want to say anything, but we told you so.
I told you so.
I did say in the office the other day that I think this year could be a year of reckoning for a few brands.
Right.
Yeah.
And the way that sales in general are going in the automotive space, they aren't very strong. In fact, they're pretty weak. And maybe we might see a few more brands by the wayside this year.
I think it's a big reminder in terms of how
Business.
tight margins are
Yeah.
in the car
Absolutely.
business, because when we're saying sales are weak, down about 8%.
Yeah.
Year on year.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not to be sneezed at, but it's not 40%.
No.
Yep.
It's 8%. So there are a lot of dealerships really hurting,
Yep.
and shows how thin wholesale margins are on new cars, and how much interest rates affect how much you can make out of finance and insurance. And we've got a very low interest rate environment at the moment. It's a real reminder, I suppose. of
Sadly,
all
though,
of that.
it's been low interest rates, but hard to get money.
Correct.
So
yes.
there's
Lending
people getting knocked back
restrictions,
who would otherwise have been able to get the money because there's been so much happening in the banking sector.
Correct.
So it's sort of a
Yeah.
perfect storm,
Yeah.
but none of this would have changed the decision of General Motors to
Yeah.
not make right-hand drive
Well,
cars.
the good
anymore.
news is that the value of Mal's EH has gone up overnight. He's now that's basically his superannuation now.
Yep.
I think you've got no worries
That's
in
what certain people in my household might consider it as. Yeah.
And my dad's one as well. So
Oh,
my
yeah?
dad's got two. So,
Two EHs.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Such a topper, Matt.
cashing in.
Oh,
Matt's
That's right.
he goes EH futures. He's betting on what they're
Oh,
going to be
it's-
worth
it's
Well,
in
that's
5 years'
inheritance.
time.
I'll kind of just point out that our Auto Trader website's full of
EH Holdens.
Holden collectible
Collectible
cars now.
Holdens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Everyone's a
can't-
collector's car
You
now.
can't get any more.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to find another one.
They're all limited editions. That's
But the
right.
thing is, I guess we're being silly about it a little bit.
Yeah.
There are going to be Holdens in dealerships for the next 12 months ish.
Yep.
Maybe even a little bit longer in
Yes.
some dealerships. So
Yes.
there are going to be Holdens out
If
there
you
for
want
people to
one,
buy.
you can still buy
Well,
one.
that'd be nice to be a fly on the wall and know how much forward ordering has to be fulfilled,
Yeah.
or whether the switch is pulled, tonight. Don't build any more.
Boats on the ocean.
Yeah, how many
when
are
they
on the
still come
water?
into
How many
port.
are coming?
Yeah.
And what price have they been bought at? What price will they be sold at? That's probably part of the pain.
Yeah.
Because it'll be very hard as a Holden salesperson to get out on the showroom floor tomorrow and do deals.
I think we also
$1 billion.
need $1 billion.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to remember as well that if it can happen to Holden, it can happen to any company.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, Ford,
Well-
we're talking about how successful they are at the moment, but really it's just the Mustang and the Ranger.
Yeah.
The next generation Ranger might be a dud and they might not get any more Mustangs, and that's it. So,
It's possible.
yep.
Can I say, on that note, it was only 2006 that we launched the VE Commodore that we developed ourselves. $1 billion, the $1 billion baby.
Yep.
And it followed on from the VZ series, which had evolved at that point to include sedan, wagon, SUV, coupe, 3 body styles of ute.
Yes.
With V6 or V8 engines.
Yep.
And the V6 was built here,
Yep.
and all of those bodies were built here.
But also,
Yep.
if the GFC hadn't happened,
Yep.
that export to the US would have been a big deal,
Totally.
and Pontiac wouldn't have died.
Yep.
All kinds of scenarios could have
Hummer.
played out. Fact is,
Yep.
GFC did happen,
Yep.
Yep.
and that threw a big hole in that.
And it's not much Australia could do about that.
No,
Not really.
No.
So, Holden, it's not your fault. I blame the Americans. And just the way the world has turned. It's moved the SUVs. I don't think they were on top of the SUV thing for a
like
while there.
sands through the hourglass.
But it's funny though,
and
like-
so the world turns. Sorry.
Mentioning the SUV thing, like
interesting
there's
facts on
brands
that.
now, two brands in my mind in particular that are still struggling to catch up with the SUV thing. It's Kia and Hyundai, and they are probably 3 SUVs short of their potential
Yeah.
in this market in
Yeah.
both brands.
Yeah.
A couple of utes too.
Yeah, a couple of utes as well. So that's that just goes to show
Absolutely.
that even if you've got what is considered the right product,
Yeah.
you've got to be able to sell it,
Yeah, that's right.
and it's got to have some reason for buying it.
But you've also
That's
got
right.
the likes of Jeep trimming their lineup. The Renegade, I want to say, hasn't worked, so it quietly exits the stage. And they're not exactly enjoying healthy sales across any of their brands at this stage.
Yeah.
So
But even the likes of Volkswagen, they've recently lost the Arteon, we understand.
Yep.
But it's not an SUV.
No, but
They're about
Models.
to add SUVs, in fact. So
yeah,
T-Rocs.
it's definitely for
This
the
is where-
addition of
That's
two
right.
more.
this is where we're at,
SUVs.
isn't it? Like this is the market.
Yeah,
So-
I think it's aside from the Holden factor, it is just a reminder as to how delicate a seemingly robust business can actually be in the face of some competitive element that comes out of the clouds or some unexpected thing that pulls the rug out from under you financially.
Yep.
We're always in a fairly delicate state.
There's going to be some angry people. I feel desperately sad for the people at Holden who have decided to stay. I'm going to stay even after local production ends.
Yep.
And there's people who've dedicated their entire career to this brand as well.
That's right.
We listened to one key one, Christian Aquilina, the acting
Yep.
boss, delivering that press conference before. very personable announcement.
Yeah, it was heartfelt
Very,
for sure.
very
And we've all worked closely with various members of the Holden team, and in previous lives, I have as well, with different jobs I've had, and I know they're engineering folks, and they're fantastic. We're losing all of that,
Those
all of that
engineering
knowledge.
guys buy their product.
That's
they,
right.
They design, build it, and buy it. They own it. They love it. They're
That's
into
right.
it as much as any
And
Holden fan I've ever met.
How would you feel as well? I know there'd be customers and Holden fans and just fans of enthusiasts of cars in general feeling a bit pissed off about this as well.
Yeah.
How's this happened?
Yeah.
How has the biggest Australian brand, one of the most successful brands in the world, gone from being on top to 6 feet under?
Yeah.
How's that happened?
I think it's the diminishing tariff
You
regime.
can listen back
and
to this podcast.
It's a global economic environment
Yeah.
where all of a sudden we're not just Australia, we're a player
Yep.
in this big pool. And once the tariffs were taken down, really good product came in.
Yeah.
The competition firmed up and it just became more difficult
Yeah.
to do business. And once the co-investment,
Yep.
so-called, with local manufacturing
Yeah.
was no longer there,
Yeah.
that all fell in a heap and bingo.
And it costs
the
a lot of money
dominoes
to
started
build
to fall.
It costs a lot of money to build cars in Australia.
That's
and,
right.
We enjoy a pretty good
Yeah, standard of living.
Standard of living in
Absolutely.
Australia, and would we swap that for the Commodore?
The
I don't
currency
think
didn't
so.
play well, all that. I think a lot of it does sheet
Yeah.
home to the cessation of local manufacturing for Holden. That was a massive broadside to the Holden brand.
Can I get a bit cranky? So those blokes with the Chevy badge on the front of their Marley Elite, I hope you're happy.
Or on the Cruise, or
Jeez.
Yeah.
V6S.
My favourite Cruise with a Chevy badge. It actually had a Chevy badge, but also an M3 badge. That was amazing.
I saw one on Car Spotters today as a Chimera with a Chevy badge on the grill, which I thought was awesome.
Was it a Cavalier?
I have no idea.
I saw a
the Chevrolet Cavalier was a Chimera.
Anyway,
I saw a Chimera with the VL Commodore BT1 police car
that's correct.
livery.
Saw it yellow.
Wow.
One, yeah.
So good.
Wow.
Anyway, look, on that note, that is our special edition. Mel, you got one more?
Can I just add? I wanted
Yep.
to add a bit of a loose timeline of events.
All right, go for it.
So I said before, 2006 was the launch of the VE Commodore on the Zeta platform.
Yeah.
October 2017 was when they ceased manufacture of the Commodore.
Yep.
The Cruise, I think, was 12 months prior. This
Yep.
is all kind of off the top of my head here.
Yep.
December 2019, we saw David Butner leave.
Yes.
Former Toyota boss, Toyota Australia boss, leave. And then I think within that week, the Commodore
Commodore
name was
stopped.
axed,
Yep.
ZB Commodore. And February 17th, 2020, they've announced that the Holden
And
brand will
I
end
think,
by
as we all
2021.
said, it's going to make a really good book.
Yeah.
Once all the details
Movie.
around these things emerge and the truth will out, as it inevitably does over time, it's going to be very interesting to see what happened and who said what and when.
I
it'll be
want
fascinating.
Dave Butner's view.
I know.
Taken to Detroit,
There'll be-
Dave.
there'll be-
We're going to have to get you to close Holden. Over my dead body.
Okay, I'm gone. Yeah. All right, so thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Hope
Thank
that
you.
helped.
Thank
Any
you.
questions, let us know. We'll be doing the podcast as usual this week, so maybe we can cover some of those when we get together again.
And keep the conversation going on the social channels.
Absolutely. Till then, see ya.